My name is Elena Carter. I'm 31 years old, and the moment my father looked across a crowded dining table and said the words, "She's not really my daughter," something inside me didn't break. It went quiet. 30 people were in that room, plates clinking, wine glasses half full, my stepmother already clutching a napkin like she'd rehearsed the scene 100 times in the mirror. It was Christmas Eve, and my father chose that moment to destroy me. Before I go any further, if this story pulls you in, take a second to like and subscribe, only if you mean it, and tell me in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is where you are. I read every single one. Now, let me take you back, because nothing about that night makes sense unless you know what came before it. I was 12 when my mother died, pancreatic cancer, 6 months between the diagnosis and the funeral. At that age, you don't really understand death. You just understand absence. The empty chair at dinner, the smell of someone's perfume still clinging to a sweater in the closet. At the funeral, I stood beside the casket in a black dress that was too big for me. My dad stood on the other side. Not once did he reach for my hand. The only person who held me was my grandmother, Evelyn. She wrapped me in her coat and whispered something I didn't understand at the time. People reveal themselves when grief walks in the door. 3 months later, my father brought a woman home. Her name was Karen. Karen had a daughter named Mia, who was 10. Bright smile, shiny hair, the kind of kid who looked like she stepped out of a cereal commercial. Within 2 weeks, Karen had moved into the house. Within 3 months, my bedroom was no longer mine. Karen said Mia needed the bigger room for school and creativity. I moved into the small spare room in the basement. Concrete walls, one narrow window. That was the moment my life quietly shifted, though I didn't realize it yet. At 13, you still believe adults are good people. You believe fairness is real. You believe your father would never let anyone treat you like you don't belong. But slowly, almost invisibly, things changed. Karen never insulted me directly. She was too smart for that. Instead, she planted ideas. Little comments dropped into conversations like seeds. Elena has always been different. Sometimes I wonder if she really takes after Richard. Margaret traveled a lot before she got pregnant. She said things in soft voices, in kitchens, at barbecues, at church potlucks. Always just quiet enough that someone would repeat it later. And my father never corrected her. He didn't defend me. He didn't defend my mother. He just stayed silent. Silence can destroy someone faster than cruelty. By 16, I had straight A's, 2 part-time jobs, and the habit of apologizing whenever I walked into a room. Karen's daughter Mia had everything. Private school, piano lessons, a new car at 17. I had scholarships and a bus pass. I left for college the day after my 18th birthday. My dad hugged me quickly at the door like he was late for a meeting. Karen waved from the kitchen. Mia barely looked up from her phone. The only person who cried was my grandmother. She pressed something into my hand before I left, a small silver locket. "Keep this," she said quietly, "and trust your instincts." Inside the locket was a tiny folded piece of paper. I didn't open it. I thought it was just a note from her. Life moved forward the way it always does. College, nursing school, long nights studying anatomy and drinking terrible cafeteria coffee. My father called maybe 4 times in 4 years. Karen never called. Mia posted pictures online of vacations, shopping trips, beach houses. It looked like a completely different family than the one I grew up in. When my grandmother died 5 years later, no one told me until 2 days after the funeral. I drove 6 hours to her house anyway. Karen answered the door. "Oh, Elena," she said with fake sympathy. "Everything happened so fast." Behind her, I saw moving boxes in the living room, documents stacked on the table. Something in my chest tightened, but I was too tired, too numb to question anything. So I left. That was the last time I saw the house before Christmas Eve. 3 weeks before that dinner, my cousin texted me, "Dad wants everyone here for Christmas this year. Make sure you come." Make sure you come? Not an invitation,
a summons. I almost didn't go, but something about my grandmother's voice in my memory kept echoing. People reveal themselves when grief walks in the door. So I drove 6 hours through snow and pulled into the driveway that night. The house looked perfect. Lights wrapped around the porch, garlands on the railing. It looked like something out of a holiday movie. Karen opened the door with a huge smile. "Elena, we weren't sure you'd come." The living room was full. Relatives, friends, people I barely recognized. My father sat at the head of the dining table holding a glass of whiskey. Karen squeezed his arm, and my father stood up, his face red from whiskey. "I'm tired of pretending," he said. The room went silent. He pointed at me. "She's not really my daughter." No yelling, no dramatic music, just those words. My world shrinking to the size of a heartbeat. Karen dabbed her eyes with a tissue. Someone dropped a fork. My little cousin asked why everyone was staring, and for a moment I almost believed them, almost believed that somehow I didn't belong there. Then I felt the locket around my neck. My grandmother's voice came back to me like a whisper. "Trust your instincts." So I stood up. I walked down the hallway and I opened the old coat closet. Behind a stack of winter boots, exactly where my grandmother once showed me years ago, was a small wooden box. I brought it back to the table. Karen's face drained of color. I opened the lid. Inside was an envelope, a letter, and a document. My hands were shaking as I unfolded the letter. It was from my grandmother. She wrote it 2 years before she died. In the letter, she explained everything. Karen had been spreading rumors for years. She told my father my mother had an affair, that I might not be his child. So my grandmother did something simple. She had a DNA test done, using samples from a family health screening. The result was inside the envelope. I held up the paper so everyone could see. Probability of paternity, 99.99%. The room didn't explode, it deflated, like someone had pulled the air out of every lie at once. My father stared at the paper, then at Karen. "You told me?" he whispered. Karen tried to speak, but nobody was listening anymore, and for the first time in 20 years, the truth was louder than her voice. But the box wasn't empty yet. There was one more document inside. My grandmother's will. She had left the house, not to my father, but to me, because she knew one day I might need proof that I belonged somewhere. Karen left that night without saying goodbye. My father sat at the table staring at the floor. I didn't feel victorious. I felt tired. The kind of tired that comes from carrying someone else's lies for too long. The next morning, the lawyer confirmed everything. The will was valid. The house was mine. But the house wasn't the real inheritance. The real inheritance was something my grandmother understood better than anyone else. The truth has patience. It waits. And when it finally shows up, it doesn't need to shout. It just stands there, quietly, while every lie collapses around it. I still talk to my father sometimes. We're rebuilding something slowly. Trust grows back the same way broken bones heal, painfully, but stronger in the end. Karen disappeared from our lives. Her daughter, Mia, called me months later and apologized. She said she always suspected something was wrong. Sometimes people inherit lies the same way others inherit houses. You don't realize how heavy they are until they fall apart. Today, I live in my grandmother's house. Her garden is still in the backyard. Some nights I sit on the porch and think about everything that happened, about the moment my father tried to erase me from the family, and the moment the truth erased every lie instead. If you've ever been made to feel like you don't belong in your own family, remember this. Belonging isn't something someone else gets to grant you. It's something you carry inside yourself, and sooner or later, the truth finds its way home. If this story stayed with you until the end, tell me one thing in the comments. What would you have done in my place that night? And if someone in your life needs to hear a story about standing up for yourself, share this with them. Because sometimes all it takes to change everything is opening the box no one else wants you to see.